Hey guys, this is Megan, and this is my week 5 video discussion. And this week we were talking about media and the global role of media and how that looks in countries other than the United States. And I immediately thought of this book that I had in a previous class recently, Globalization and American Pop Culture by Lang Crothers. And I just wanted to read you a little statement that he made in chapter 5 on page 181. He says, if popular culture is a meaning-bearing entity, if its products both manifest and shape culture, then diverse states and communities have an interest in limiting the access and influence of a popular culture alien to their own. And that pretty much sums up how I feel about media in general. I think pop culture definitely expresses itself through media a lot of times, film, music, television, even in the States, our broadcasting, I think, at times can be defined as a pop culture, has a pop culture identity at times. And so, not everyone wants to be the United States. And I think that it's important to let other countries have their own identity in media. And like Dr. Slade had mentioned, France's 25% rule. I think that is it seems like a pretty appropriate way to handle things, because if the content that is not from your country is being limited at 25%, then you're probably looking harder at what that 25% is, and so what you are allowing to be consumed is probably more quality of a product. That's even if it's coming from an outside source, I'm assuming. I lived in I would call it a second world country, but I lived on the island of Mauritius, and this was like several years ago, like 12, 13 years ago. So obviously I'm sure that they have changed in the last decade to some degree, but when I lived there, because it was not a third world setting, but it was definitely not a first world setting. So, somewhere in between, and then depending on your income, could definitely have been more of a third world situation. But in the house that I lived in, we got 3 channels on the television. There was no cable option at that time, and internet at the time was you paid based on the amount of internet you were using, and so streaming things was like not a thing at that time, and because it would have been so expensive. But anyway, one of the channels was mostly the news, and they would break it down because there were 3 major language populations on the island, and so they broke down the news into French news, Hindi news, and English news, and had, their own newscasters for each thing, but it was like the same station. But that was all the media that you were provided, and then most of the shows were either English subtitled Indian films in Tamil or Hindi, or sometimes French cartoons on Saturday morning. And so I learned a lot of French when I lived there. But I think that my whole concept of the world, and even America, for the 8 months that I lived there, was probably really different than what it would have been had I been living in the States, because of what I was presented through this really narrow-focused media. But at the same time, they were also truly protecting their cultural norms. And I think that's significant, and I think it is worth protecting. Um, that's just a little anecdote, I guess, to share about kind of my view on that. As far as making things better or um, more inclusive for the people of the world, I definitely support individual cultures and countries limiting outside sources of media in order to protect their cultural norms and values. Um, I think that we can feel um, indignant sometimes when those cultural norms do not match our own, and therefore we feel like people would be better off with an American version of media available to them. Um, I think this is a slippery slope. Um, and I think that while globalization of our media offers so many opportunities, it's not something that we can um, just run with abandon and have no um, awareness of how our products or products outside of someone's normal culture can and does impact their society. Um, so it's a thought-provoking question, and I'm not sure if I really came up with any great answers or solutions for that, other than I do support um, other countries having some sort of rule, like France's 25% rule, and that's probably really anti-freedom of speech, but I think that I try to be careful in balancing what's important to me in freedoms and the country that I live in, and um, that the laws of my land that I'm happy to have and live under um, don't necessarily mean that every other governmental entity in the world should have the same laws or promote the same ideas. I think morally, we're used to a norm in the United States that makes us think that we are kind of better than everyone else, and I think that that's a dangerous idea, and there needs to be some effort to respect other countries' cultures and laws and desire to protect their citizens in the way that they see fit. And so that might be an unpopular opinion. Anyway, that's it for me this week. I really enjoyed this class. I'm hustling to make up some lost time, but I've really appreciated the thoughtful commentary from Dr. Slade and from you, Erin, as well. And it's just been a really enjoyable experience. So thanks. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.